And now another dear friend, one of our greatest comedians. Ladies and gentlemen, Don Adams. I don't have to tell our viewers and on Mad World of Comedy or folks here at Masters that you personally won 3 Emmys for your performance in Get Smart, and the show won 5 Emmys. True?
Yes. That's true, Milton. I just told you that before we got on the air.
Oh, shut up, please. Do you believe in the theory, Don, that until you find a character for yourself, that you can base your comedy that you're doing on just non sequitur jokes?
No. For me, it was a very lucky thing. When I started out, one of the first routines that I ever wrote was a thing called The Detective, which was a takeoff on William Powell in The Thin Man. And it was a piece of comedy which, you know, the detective gets all messed up in summing up the case at the end. And it was a very successful piece on television. But more important than that was, William Powell had a way of talking, a very clipped kind of way of talking. And what I did was take that voice and exaggerate it about 4 or 5 times. And that voice gave me an identification. Now, anybody that has an identification, so when I did Get Smart and I came on, people would identify with that voice. They would identify so strongly with that voice that what was normally just amusing would become funny when that voice was used. And that voice was contagious. And that voice was an identification for me. When I used to be on the show, like we would have an actor on the show, right? And we would have a scene together. And I would say to him, all right, you'll go down to the drugstore and pick up the package. And he would say, okay, I'll go down to the drugstore and pick up the package. And the director would say, all right, let's get it ready, roll them, all right, action. And I'd say, you'll go down to the drugstore and you'll pick up the package. And he'd say, I'll go down to the drugstore and I'll pick up the package. And then the director would say, no, wait a minute, hold it, that's not right. And then the guy... sound man would say, I got it good. And everybody was talking like that until finally it came to a point where I didn't know how to do the original. I was doing impressions of people doing impressions of me.
Be very quiet, 99.
Don't slam the door.
In conclusion, I'd like to ask you something. In speaking to promising young comics that are probably watching us now, Don, what is your advice of how to be a successful comedian?
Well, it's a very difficult question to answer, particularly in this day and age. You know, in my time and in your time, there were places for comedians to learn their trade, to work in burlesque houses, and to work in nightclubs, and to work in strip joints, and to work, and eventually over the years to get their timing right, to get their material right, to get how to deal with audiences right, and eventually, when the time came that they were professionals and they knew what they were doing, if they were in the right time at the right place and they were lucky, they would become successful. It was partly talent, partly luck, and partly learning your trade. When I was a kid, I used to go to Lowe's State when you were playing there, and I used to sit for 5 shows a day and study you, and study everything that you did, your mannerisms, your takes, your everything that you did. I learned a lot from that. I learned a lot from watching you and other great comedians, and then I tried to develop a style of my own, a style like a singer develops a style, so that when you turn on the radio and you hear Tony Bennett or you hear Bing Crosby,
you know
or Frank Sinatra, you know that it is that particular person. You must get an identification so that people will know immediately who you are and that you're not just part of the other mob.
It's said wisely but true, and I'm very, very glad that you could be part of our Mad World of Comedy, and I'm very glad to count you as a friend. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Don Adams. Thank you, Don.